Okay.
Good, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dada. Doctors, chiefs, professors, statesmen, business moguls, fellow citizens, fellow Africans. You're welcome to this special meeting of Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa, Dada. We will not take your time. I'm going to request at this point that it is something of us here. So it would be kind of a daunting task to say everybody introduce yourself. But what we will request to save time would be to please go into the chat box and type in 3 items for us, please. 3 items in the chat box. Your name, your country of origin, so that we know how many African countries are represented here today in this meeting, and your country of residence. Within those 3, nothing more. Your name, please. Your country of origin, your current country of residence. That's all we need. Please type into the chat box. And so while we do that, I'm going to go ahead and call up, oh, by the way, so sorry about that. I'm Professor Pat Obiefule, the alternate president for Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa and a BOT member. And I welcome you guys. And now I'm going to call up our president to formally welcome everybody. And he is none other than Martin Uche Ebe. Martin, please take over the mic.
Thank you, Prof. I really do appreciate the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen and Africans in diaspora, my name is Martin Ebe. Usually my friends call me Uche. I would like to welcome you all to this first Zoom meeting, general meeting for the Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa, which we refer to as Dada. Dada actually is a brainchild of Dr. Cordelia Udo. We started talking about the different diasporans all over the world from different countries who have gone back to their nations to make a great change. So I said, okay, we're going to try to start something and then see how we can bring all Africans in diaspora, in the Pan-Africans, in the Caribbeans, so long as you have of African descent, this place is for you. The Dada itself is like a baby in the womb at this point in time, is growing. We expect everyone who has attended this inaugural meeting to be a member of the Dada and contribute to the development of Dada. Every suggestions, no matter how small, no matter how big, will help us in growing this into an organization that we all will be proud of. We are looking to present, we are looking to have Dada grow into an international organization, you know, with the main objective of developing African grown democracy. You know, a democracy that is indigenous to Africa, that will obey the rule of laws of the ancestors of Africa. I am a Christian, but I believe that African religion itself has a part to play in the religion of the world. And I believe that Africans are even much more afraid of their religion than the Christian religion or the Muslim religion or whatever religion. So on my own part, I'm going to put in every effort to make sure that this organization grows to be known worldwide. And some of the activities that we might be doing in the future will include voters education, which is very important, election monitoring, conferences on democratic matters, and most importantly, reducing the duplication of exercises all over Africa, where different groups are doing the same thing and wasting a lot of resources. And to be more effective, we all need to be on board and get this thing off the ground. So please go to the Dada website, register there, be a member. We'll thank you a great deal, and I'm sure your continent and the people over there will be grateful for that too. I would like this time to call on Mr. Miabia to do a presentation on Dada's aims and objectives. Thank you again, and I don't know if Professor Pat has joined. It's really my great pleasure to welcome him to this meeting, and we really appreciate his time. Thank you very much.
He's here, he has joined.
Yes, Miabia, over to you, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President Martin Egbe. I want to also express my profound appreciation to those of us who have honored this invitation and all those who have over the past few months been articulating and putting this idea together and working towards the vision of creating an organization that will bring diaspora Africans or people of African descent across the world. I have one responsibility to, within the next 15 minutes, give a very concise, very concise concept, an idea of where we are going to, and to invite us thereafter to join the process of deepening the conceptualization of this organization. We are at infancy, and so we are sort of open to ideas of how we could connect with your constituency, we could connect with your network, we could bring support to people everywhere, peoples of African descent everywhere, to put ourselves together to begin to address African problems with African thinkings and African solutions. Having made that introduction, I want to re-emphasize again that my name is Miabie Kromyema. I live in Houston, Texas, and I have joined the team of those who are putting together this to sort of develop it and to also welcome others to join the process. I do hope that you'll see my slides, and so I'll go ahead immediately to start speaking to Dada. Of course, Dada, like you've heard, is Diaspora Action for Democracy. Oh, what's wrong? Okay. I'm trying to deal with technical issues here. The slides are sort of fixed. They are not. Are you seeing the slides?
I see the first page. Yeah.
The first page.
Yes. Yeah, it seemed not to be sort of moving. I tested it earlier.
I think you got to go to slideshow. Go to slideshow and then see the options you have there on the top.
Yeah, I can see all of that. I'm doing that. Okay, we're there.
Good.
Okay, well, Dada, already known as Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa. Of course, it's an independent. The idea behind it is that we are looking to have an independent, people-run diaspora organization, and Dada seeks to promote democracy and good governance as a means of reaching the goal of welfare for all Africans across the globe. Our central aim are two: civilizing, progressively building an African civilization, the whole concept of civilization needs to be autochthonous. We need to get back to civilization. Of course, when we go back into history, you will recognize that Africa is the bastion, is the beginning of human civilization. And African people, whether they are in Babylon, or whether they were in Ethiopia, or whether they were in Egypt, anywhere, or whether they were in other parts of deep down below Egypt in Sudan and all of that, were centrally the people who developed thoughts that brought organization to human society. And we should be proud of that, and we should get back to that heritage and begin to appropriate it for recreating what we stand for. So we are looking, Dada hopes to achieve its aim through mobilizing Africans in diaspora and their resources through a shared sense of autochthonous African meaning of their democracy. The video and audio video we just listened to by Professor Patrick Lumumba was very clear that who should define democracy? What should be the definition of democracy? Democracy, where did even the people who define democracy learn from? Where did they even take the seed of the thoughts that they developed to call it, to give it a Western identity? All of that is, those are some of the thoughts that if you come to the ideation rooms that we are setting up, you will contribute effectively to sort of discover what really this word democracy is and how it has evolved and where these meanings are. Dada will work to restore the practice of democracy in its original traditional African communal society and way of life on the continent and everywhere Africans are on the globe, free of Western baggage and strings. You will agree with me that we have African societies. I mean, growing up and looking at our flock laws, African society is a communal society. We have something that essentially was participatory. The community gathers, the community takes a decision, and that decision, that will of the people is handed over to the king or to the elder or to any other persons to go and implement on behalf of the people and report back. That is essentially what democracy is, collective decision-making, and it is enrooted, very firm in African society, and that is where we were met when they came. They came and gave us their own meaning of democracy, which we now see as having is completely eroding the African sense of meaning of democracy. So we will begin to think that at a global level, bringing diaspora resources to achieve that. I wonder why this thing keeps hooking up. Okay, our vision. Our vision, of course, is to progressively evolve our own civilization and modernization in a truly African sense by contributing to by the contribution of a mobilized, organized, and active African diaspora using African people, African resources, African networks, African organizations that is powered by self-determination and a shared sense of cultural responsive meaning of democratic practices and our way of life for good governance of our society on the continent and across the globe. What's our mission? We are committed to bringing into life an Africa where people are realizing a progressively civilizing society and continent that is fast modernizing, propelled by democratic and good governance philosophy and practice, and drawing upon the technical, professional, material resources of African diaspora across the globe. So we have two basic goals. Our first goal is to continuously regenerate African civilization. Of course, civilization is ad infinitum. It continues. Every society does better than the other society and moves that, even though we've seen historically where certain society reverse it and another generation comes and sort of takes it up there. African could be said to have reversed this civilization. And civilization is not modernization. That's why you see our second goal is about modernization. Civilization is about people, decorum, order, and so on, that comes out of the fine qualities of the human soul that is being purified to be empathetic and all those virtues that you see in civilized behavior. So, but then, of course, it is upon that basis that modernization, like you listened to Professor Lumumba, the people have modernized their society, and over time they've been disseminated by war because the attitude of the soul has not been civilized. So we have two essential goals, and we are promoting that through democracy. So our objective generally are on four planks that are essential to the whole idea of civilization and modernization. One is to awaken a pan-African citizenship. So let's get Africans to think beyond the Berlin Conference arrangements. Let's begin to create an African citizenship that is truly African. We also want to nurture a pro-African and democratic leadership. So we want to begin to, the two fundamental elements is citizenship and leadership. And then, of course, based on citizen and leadership, foster a culture of democratic development as the third objective. And then using democratic development processes, deal with the issue of good governance as the outcome of citizenship and leadership. If citizenship and leadership is not delivering on good governance, and then, of course, creating a culture of democracy that ultimately gets us to the aim that we have, which is civilization and modernization, then we have not started. In a concise way, these are what we are all about, and we have sort of put a broad structure in place. We are evolving a constitution. We've set up a draft constitution, but we are concerned over a transition period to get more people, greater diversity from the Caribbeans, from African Americans, from Africans everywhere to come and be part of the thinking process that will set up a constitution that is adopted, that really reflects our diversity, our thinking. We don't want an echo chamber where a few people are thinking, because for us, that African sense of participation, communal participation, is essential to the decisions that we make. So we have a transition board of trustees today. We also have a transition executive council headed by Martin Egbe. And then we are now beginning to look for representations across the globe that will anchor the process of regional structures that we'll begin to rely on as we move forward. So you see the board of trustees, and we are looking for technical advisory board, which we are looking for the best of African brains anywhere in the world to come and advise us in core technical areas, and then honorary advisors, people who have achieved who have made profound achievements and have a reputation that we can leverage on to build on where we are going to. So we are interested in a board of advice, an honorary advisory board of very successful people who have embodied the spirit of Africa and the spirit of democracy, and are committed to that, to come and be part of our board of advisors, working with the board of trustees. And of course, we have two important units in the executive council. The group that is concerned with programming, what are the areas of program that we need to develop across for our people? And then, of course, the corporate services end, where the day-to-day running of the affairs, side by side with the programming. And then, of course, you have the third arm of the executive, which is then the regional, 10 regional structures that you see here. We have North Africa and African Americans. So all of North Africa, Canada, and the US, and all African Americans are being put together around there because of their uniqueness. We want them to have a unique space to also think while they bring that thinking and resourcefulness into the bigger house. Of course, Eastern and Western Europe region, we have South America and the Caribbeans. We have North African region, we have West African region, Central African region, we have East African region, Southern African region, and Asia Pacific region, and of course, Arab and the Middle East. Africans are in all of these places, and so we want to harness that through these regions, and then of course, begin to get deep into units, whether they are countries, whether they are cities, whether they are locals, and set up a robust structure across the globe that will then lead us to where we're going to. Our idea of what that should be is what you will bring on board into the whole thing as you join us. What do you want Dada to be within this framework and these overarching goals? What are the substantial active elements that we are going to put in place? Yesterday and day before yesterday, when we were discussing, people were beginning to think that African music is dominating. Can we begin to do, can we begin to strengthen that as a vehicle to mobilize our people? African literature has always made sense to the world. Can we begin to look at it? African food, African clothing, African dances, African culture, and African technology, and all of that. Can we begin to get this into the ideation room and create a hub around which people who have these competencies can then be organized and brought to the international platform and given exposure and all of that? So in the last slide, you will see that at the bottom of it is the Global Convention of African People. Within this convention, we are looking to have a great African. In fact, yesterday when we were discussing this concept with the president, we were saying, can we go to the Caribbean as a holiday session and bring all Africans and begin to do it annually or thereabout and say, Africans can gather across the world outside of institutions and they're different from states, and say, let somebody attend Africa like a Sudanese, or one of the ethnic groups are Sudanese, and come with a true African identity, not clothed by the state, so that we can begin to have indigenous African people express themselves in their own rights as African under the Convention of African People, and then we deal with our issues. So these are the type of things we are thinking, and my duty today is to inspire you to come join. Because we are starting, and we are beginning to look for ways to fund ourselves, we require that any person who wants to join, an initial little donation of just $10 could sort of support you to become a member. And then, of course, if you so wish, you can then begin to sort of adopt us and begin to pay the monthly dues. But I mean, we also know that people who just want to take their time to understand, so they can just join with the $10 membership and wait to see whether this fits into them, because we are people who want to use a will that is convinced, a will that is convicted, a will that is clear, that has a clear reasoning for why you should join this thing and contribute to it, so that we don't have a situation where people are manipulated or forced into doing anything, but they come with a conviction and an open mind and attitude to lead us moving forward. I guess that's where my own presentation stops, and to say that we are hoping to launch a bi-weekly or monthly, we've not made a firm decision on that, where we can then begin to have these ideation centers and membership centers and so on, and then begin to discuss and set up the regional systems that will begin to bring people in their respective comfort zone and connect them to the greater vision. Thank you very much and welcome to Dada. Mr. President, I yield the mic.
Thank you, Miabiye. You did an excellent work. We are very grateful to you. And I believe I can call on to Dan Elumba to please make the introduction to our special guest of honor, who we are very grateful to be here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening. Professor Patrick Okedenachi Utomi is not a stranger to anyone who has followed the politics of Nigeria, or anyone who has followed the corporate development of Nigeria. He is a Nigerian professor of political economy and a management expert. He is a fellow of the Institute of Management, Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria, and a former presidential candidate. He is the founder of Center for Value in Leadership, CVL, and the African Democratic Congress. He is a professor at Lagos Business School and has served in senior positions in government, as well as an advisor to the former president of Nigeria, the private sector, and the chief operating officer of Volkswagen Nigeria. Prof, where I miss, please, I'll be happy for you to correct me, because your personality is so diverse that I cannot even begin to do justice to it. But of late, especially since last year, Prof is the founder and chairman of the Big Tent. And so if I followed P2B's presidential campaign, you must be familiar with Big Tent. Big Tent, a coalition of political parties, social movements, civil society organizations, and candidate support groups, which make up the third force for reclaiming Nigeria and setting it on the path of progress through good governance and through democratic ideals. While the previous speaker said Dada is just a child still setting out, Dada has already done and intervened, especially starting from Nigeria in the political arena, using the instrumentality of the media. They have sponsored press statements, press conferences, media conference on issues that touch on Nigeria and Africa as a whole, even in developments around Africa and Niger and Mali. These are some of the things that Dada has done. So seeing the credentials of Professor Pat Utomi, it is our privilege to say that he is the right person to give us this foundational speech, the first person we are getting into Dada, to speak on how Africans and diaspora can intervene in democracy in Africa. So we would like to use this opportunity to thank profoundly Professor Pat Utomi for all his efforts and struggle for democracy and better life for all Nigerians. So, Prof, please, we are yielding the mic to you to speak to us today on the theme that is the theme for tonight's evening meeting. Prof, I hand over to you.
Well, thank you so very much, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be able to join you and to share some thoughts on a very, very important subject like the diaspora and the strengthening of the democratic ethos on the continent of Africa. Let me begin by saying that my reflections will be both from the arena of praxis and from general conceptual views about the role of the diaspora that are available out there. Because I too belong to both worlds. I returned to Nigeria, yes, in 1982 after my PhD in the United States. But I have kept in very close touch with the diaspora and very, very frequently have returned for either sabbaticals or one thing or the other. And one of the points I'd like to make about how formidable the diaspora has become and the difference that this will make to how Africa evolves. It's a very simple story about how when I was a grad student in the US around 1979, very few of us actually had any positions of significance in American society besides
We can no longer hear the...
He was muted or something?
Yeah, Prof, I think you're mute.
He's muted.
Prof, you sort of probably accidentally muted yourself.
Oh. Or it could be the system, who knows?
I mean, it's accident, it's evident. It's muted on the dashboard.
Let me
oh,
see.
sorry, I don't know, something muted me.
Yeah.
Some accident, but can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, lovely. I apologize. I was saying that, when I look at the environment and how it has changed from the late 70s when I lived in the US to today, I see how much more of influence the diaspora has become. And I am convinced that the future of Africa significantly hangs on the diaspora, and that influence can leave impact on many arenas, including the arena of democratic action practice. I already see this even in the professions. I had the privilege of speaking to a webinar last Friday of one of the insurance groups here, talking about health and health management and health insurance. And part of the points that I made in that remark is that we have reached this situation, for example, today where the statistics suggest that as many as 70% of the Black doctors in the United States are Nigerian. How has that translated into impact? There are several emerging hospital groups in Nigeria now that have been set up by Nigerians who are practicing in the United States, some from Europe. And I know at least 3 such doctors who fly into Nigeria almost every month to work out of their local affiliates for a few days, bringing the expertise that they have out there and making a tremendous impact on the local healthcare situation, which is severely challenged. Even I myself have recently had a small challenge, and the only full cancer care facility that I know of in the country was actually set up by a Diaspora, a Nigerian oncologist who is the CEO of the Nigerian operation. I expect, therefore, that influence will cascade down in many areas. Historically, the truth is that if we look at the great transformations in economic and political terms that have taken place in the 20th century, the diaspora of those countries have played very, very important roles. If we take Japan's emergence at the end of the Tokugawa shogunates and the Meiji Restoration, you will see clearly the track of the Japanese diaspora, largely out of Germany, in turning Japan to be more tech-friendly and industrializing to become the light for yellow peoples in that age, moving sharply to become the second most powerful economy in the world at a point in the 20th century. If you look at India rising, if you look at China rising, you will see a major effect of the diaspora. But I think that in looking at Africa, it is important for us to take a Pan-African view, a view that must begin with collaboration in the continent, which the diaspora can impact, so that the effect of diaspora impact can percolate across the continent. I take particularly notice of the fact that African countries have found in dealing with matters of trade, which is why after the Continental Free Trade Area is considered a source of great possibilities. The fact that collaboration increases Africa's capacity to participate in international trade. Unless we can aggregate across borders, volumes of processed products from Africa in international trade terms will remain so small that Africa will take a long time to get out of its current 3% share of global trade, for example. But that conditions that enable Africa to have aggregation across borders will probably allow for, say, a trading company that can pool the production of whatever it is across several African countries in the way that Marubeni did for Japan, and therefore be able to supply those who need those in the volumes that would be significant. Then we will not be as effective. Now, ditto for matters of political influence. As we can see in recent times, there has been, for good and for ill, attempts to either facilitate stable democratic ways in Africa. Because of this, the African Union, the ECOWAS, have made firm stance on how the nature of governments should be more democratic, and change should come essentially from the will of the people rather than the traditional ways of the 60s and 70s and 80s. Africa came to a fairly sorry point during the late 80s and 1990s because of the kind of instability that came from resource wars and frequent changes of government through military rule, that in 1996, the dominant view of Africa in the world was called Afro-pessimism, a world that was so pessimistic about the possibilities of the African continent that somebody joked after one OECD meeting in which the world was analyzed with the economies of the industrialized West becoming more great service economies, Asia becoming the manufacturing workshop of the world. And then somebody said, in all this analysis, where's Africa? And somebody just condescendingly said, who knows, they may have dropped out of the world map by then. And I happen to be part of a group invited back then to the Africa-Europe or Europe-Africa Summit, as it was called, by Aspen Institute, France. These summits took place every other year in Annecy, in France. And they typically invited a number of African heads of states, usually the Francophone ones, and some leading intellectuals and political figures to meet with European counterparts. And I recall that the the theme, the leader at that time was former French Prime Minister Ramon Barre. And in that 1996 meeting, the theme was Africa must produce or die. So this view of Afro-pessimism, I think, became so overwhelming that African leaders began to scramble for new ways, different ways.
It's muted again.
I'm not sure why that is happening.
Okay,
But,
you're back, yeah.
So you can hear me again. Please, once if that happens again, just quickly let me know, so I can check on it. So I was saying that, you know, Afro-pessimism became the thinking of the mid-90s. And part of the effect of Afro-pessimism was a certain new urgency. Now, the world then saw...
What's going on here? We lost you again. It looks like there's a latency on your end. Yeah, we lost you again.
No, he's actually muted.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That
Yeah, Prof, we lost you again.
the audio is lost.
Allow him to mute. Go to the setting. Okay, let me do that. Don't worry.
Yeah, please. Okay.
Okay, try again, Prof.
Yeah,
Good.
okay. I'm not so sure why it's happening, but I was trying to mute and it was getting stubborn. But you can hear me now, right?
Yes,
sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that with the structural adjustment programs, the Washington Consensus, African leaders found that for economic survival reasons, they had to begin to accept, if you will, commands from Washington. The World Bank Group argued that economic assistance was not enough. They must democratize. They must do this and do that. That's how the so-called current democracy wave came into Africa. It wasn't that African leaders of their own discovered that it was better for the people of Africa to be in democratic regimes. Even if traditional Africa, as I heard from the presentation from you, traditional Africa were in many ways more democratic societies than the current arrangements. But the nature of the colonial intervention created, if you will, puppet leaderships, not connected to the population, but connected more to the elite of the metropole. Elites, you know, connected to the elites of Europe, rather than to the people that they are supposed to serve. But the acceptance of the new urging for democracy to be able to get economic adjustment support from Washington led to this new order of democracies across Africa. So that compared to the 80s, when we had so many military regimes, we suddenly had democracy around Africa. But were they real democracies? Most of them were just excuses to be better accepted in Washington. And many of them were tools of Paris, London, and Washington in collaboration, as I said, between the elites of those capitals and the elites that grab power. But the people were not the focus of that democracy, which is why those democracies began to wobble, because they didn't serve the interest of the people. They were just window dressings to make Washington happy, and even happier to serve the interests of those capitals much more than to serve the interests of the people. In some writing that I did only a couple of days ago, I actually talked about apologizing, that is me apologizing to some of the dependistas of the 1980s. You know, dependistas, advocates of the dependency theory in international political economy, where economies of the South were, you know, said to be dependent on economies of the North, and radical, more left-inclined scholars in international political economy argued for a selective delinking from international capital. Amongst the many scholars that argued in that general thesis was a certain Brazilian who was at the Economic Commission for Latin America called Enrique Fernando Cardoso. I actually recall that as a grad student, I met Cardoso at a conference in New York in 1979-80. And I actually precociously remarked after his presentation that I loved the dependency thesis, that it was elegant theorizing, but I didn't see the redemptive power in it to save the people that they were making a plea for from their condition of being stuck in dependency-induced poverty. Interestingly, 3 decades later, many years after, this man had gone on to become president of Brazil, a very interesting journey, and was given a lecture in Lagos. And I kind of reminded him of our meeting much earlier when I was a grad student, and we laughed about it because Cardoso, when he ended up as president, and he told a remarkable story that day about the process of how he became finance minister of Brazil. But the reality is that as finance minister of Brazil, he literally committed intellectual suicide, in the sense that he abandoned the theories of dependency theory and embraced globalization, dramatically changing Brazil's course, which then ascended further under his successor, Inácio Lula da Silva. However, I recognize in looking at what was happening in Africa currently, with the wave of coups in the Sahel and all of that, that there was a point to the so-called center-periphery theory that some traditions within the general dependency school threw up back in those days, that talked about this alignment of interests between elites in Africa with elites in Europe, in which the periphery of the periphery, Africa being the periphery, was the ultimate victim and marginalized, whereas the center of the center and the center of the periphery got along and somehow provided linkages that satisfy their interests. If you look at what has happened to Niger, if you really look at what the French have done in Africa, it is criminal and violates every bit of the language of fair trade that we have all been talking about, those who work in my area. So what was fair in the trade when France pays Niger what it pays Niger for uranium, and Niger is in darkness, but France is all lit up with nuclear power coming from uranium from Niger? You will see, returning to the theme in a proper sense, that consciousness about those problems were significantly raised by this Zimbabwean doctor who was AU ambassador to the United States or United States. And I recall she and I actually met in, of all places or paradoxes of meeting, we met in Niamey at a summit of African heads of state. And I said to her, look, those videos you've been doing, those efforts you've been making to galvanize the African diaspora have had remarkable impact. You deserve a big hug. The truth is that that's where the power of the diaspora begins to come in. Have we had democracies in Africa? In my view, we have not. What we have had have been showboats designed by the center of the periphery to look good before the center of the center, and to promote the interests of those elites. And so they could not have been democracies, because the democracies are supposed to be in the interest of the greatest majority of the people, who are the ordinary people. The so-called democracies of Africa have not been able to show that they govern in the interest of the people. And the diaspora, therefore, has, because of the exposure they have, because of the understanding of democracy that they have been, that they've encountered where they live, they have to inject a new kind of sensitivity to what democracy means to the communities back home. Indeed and in truth, one of the big struggles with diaspora voting in a country like Nigeria is the fear that a more enlightened diaspora would vote right and vote against the establishment. And so they have been very reluctant in passing the Diaspora Voting Act in Nigeria, but it's going to come and come very soon. The force for it is hard to stop. The naked truth is that this diaspora knowledge power, increasingly economic power, because many people at home depend on that diaspora to be able to maintain basic living. And so the diaspora is in an influence position to impact the understanding of democracy, such that the poor persons in Africa do not sell their birthrights for a measure of pottage or whatever, out of ignorance and out of the desire to survive now. You know, back when I was in grad school, I had a favorite metaphor, and it came out of work done on the moral economy of the peasant. And that metaphor, Tony's metaphor, says that a peasant is so deep in water that even a ripple can drown him. And so in this desperation to survive for this moment, they are willing to sell their vote for a little money. And so when PLO Lumumba, in his many talks and write-ups on the African situation, laments that a clear-thinking candidate with all kinds of programs trying to convince people about what impact their being elected could have, including his own efforts at running, would get a nice listening, but be ignored in favor of people who give them a few shillings, Kenyan shillings, on the day to vote. This is essentially because of the unique position, or the terrible position of the poorest of the poor. They are so deep in water that even a ripple can drown them. And to keep from drowning, they will take anything they can get now, even if they know that it jeopardizes their longer-term future. It is therefore an arena in which a more enlightened, a more economically comfortable diaspora can be a source of significant influence. This is why I am persuaded, I am convinced that the future of this continent depends significantly on the diaspora. Look, we live in an age, and I like to refer very often to a nice book by Adrian Woolrich, The Aristocracy of Talent, How Meritocracy Shaped the Modern World. We live in an age where talent determines progress. But we have a quote-unquote democratic order in which nepotism rules. These kinds of democratic order in Africa only means that Africa's best want to live. It means that what has happened is that a concentration of Africa's finest talents are abroad. A brain gain needs to be engineered, and that engineering is part of the reclaiming of Africa by its diaspora. This is what puts Africa in an extraordinary position, the diaspora, an extraordinary position, and Dada in a truly meaningful one to use to shape the future of this continent. Perhaps I should stop my general remarks here, and I can respond to questions if there are any.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Prof. We are really very grateful to you, even considering your present circumstance, and we hope you get well soon. Thank you again. I'm sure the group is so much appreciative of your time. Professor Biefula, please, can you, no, I think the next item on our agenda is a highlight of what the Prof has just spoken about, and a little brief on Professor PLO Lumumba, then before we go into question and answers.
Yes.
Checha, please.
Can you hear me? Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you,
Checha. Okay. Thanks, Martin. So by way of introduction, I'm Dr. Chita Zanli. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of Dada. Thank you so much, Prof. Utomi, for such a rousing and profound, well, it's not a lecture, it's a talk, a friendly talk. You're truly a gem to the continuous struggle for democratic values and rule of law in our society over the years. And we're very deeply grateful for all the sacrifices you have made and your determination to forge on in spite of all the perils and challenges. We're really sad to hear about the news of your recent health challenge, and we're thankful to God that you're doing very well. You look very well today, and we pray that that remains the case for you. Thanks so much for reminding us that the struggle for good governance is not a one-man or just for a dozen people effort, that it requires the effort of everyone who has the goodwill of Nigerians and Africans as a whole at heart. In your speech today, you have shared with us, amongst other things, that the future of Africa in all spheres of its life, depends heavily on the African diaspora. That diasporans have contributed immensely to great advancements in history and industrialization of societies, giving Japan, India, and China as illustrations. That a Pan-African view and collaboration is essential so that the African diaspora will be more effective across the continent. You gave an illustration of aggregation of trade across Africa, essential for its development. If the diaspora are able to influence policy and across the board, this might enhance this happening. It's been a challenge in the past. Also, because of exposure and understanding of democracy, the diaspora has the ability to inject a new kind of knowledge of what democracy really means to the people back home, especially given the poor economic situation in many countries. We make a lot of people susceptible to making poor leadership choices. All in all, that a brain gain needs to be engineered by the African diaspora. So you've been very consistent in your submission that a united and organized diaspora is a force to reckon with against the erosion of human and civil liberties and totalitarianism, both civil and military leadership on the African continent. So that a vibrant activist diasporan involvement, not just in talking, but also in doing, which involves active and participation of civil societies such as Dada, which we're introduced today to our audience, is established to mobilize African diaspora to facilitate, promote, and support advancement of democracy and good governance on African continent. So what is the role of Nigeria here? With Nigeria as the most populous African nation with incredible talent and human capital, a stable and progressive Nigeria is very central to the emancipation of the continent from grips of decades of leadership costs. So once again, very thankful for your commitment to truth and fairness, the determination to ensure that to raise continuous awareness and spread the motivation to diaspora to awake their capacity, that they have such power to contribute immensely to creation of a new progressive Nigeria. As they say, knowledge is power. So now they're being informed that they can do this, especially for somebody like you who has been around for so long. We're looking really forward to a lot of enhanced participation on this front. So consequently, I would like to use the opportunity to encourage everyone here to join us in this quest. Please spread the word to people you know, people around you, Nigerians, Africans from whatever spheres of life, to please join us. They can click the link in the chat now in our WhatsApp group. Check out the Dada website at www.diasporaactionfordemocracy.org and please get involved. Yes, so I would pass on to Dada Alternate President Prof. Patu Obiefule for a few remarks, and then we'll go on to the question and answer session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Can I do mine because I have another meeting?
Thank you, Dr. Chete. I want to lend my voice. I've introduced myself for those of us who may have come later. Professor Patu Obiefule, BOT member of Dada and the alternative president. I want to lend my voice to expressing our profound appreciation for Professor Patu Utomi for honoring our invitation under the circumstances and for sharing his wonderful insights. Ladies and gentlemen, having listened to Professor Patu Utomi and the insights he has shared, when you combine that with a lot of what Professor Patrick Lumumba have been saying, and for those of us who came earlier and watched a bit of the video of Professor Lumumba, you can see, at least I hope, we can all see a great rationale for joining Dada. You have all heard yourself what Professor Utomi has said. Professor Lumumba has highlighted in that video to us how the African continent has been enslaved, has been marginalized, has been bullied. They engendered brain drain, which we have been called upon now to engineer, to turn the table, turn it around to brain gain. And how did they manage to do that? By helping to install misleaders. According to Professor Lumumba, that's what he called them. We've never had leaders in Africa, we've had misleaders. And these were enthroned by these bullies, these Western governments that have marginalized Africans. And what that has led to is enemies from within. We have our very own citizens who have been enthroned by foreign interests, who go and get their sanction, their approval to then come and manage their interest on our soil. And in so doing, have managed to disrupt, disorganize, mismanage our economies, our collective economies, such that it has given rise to the brain drain. Now, that irks me to the core. When I listening to Professor Utomi now and listening to Professor Lumumba, that does something to my inside. Imagine when you're being bullied, when you have been bullied for so long. Now, all of a sudden, you realize that I have to do something about this. Now, what's more awesome to me is the fact that here we are actually the brain behind the status that these governments enjoy as world powers. It is our brain. They mess up our continent, causing us to come over here and engage our brains to attain the position of world power while our homes are in a tatter, in a mess. So I'm thankful at this point, ladies and gentlemen, that we have all heard, we have all seen evidence everywhere that it is about time we redeem ourselves, we reclaim our continent. And also, one of the high points, actually a constant theme of Professor Lumumba's talks and lectures, is this African unity. Now, we all know that divide and conquer is an age-old strategy that still works like magic even today. And that's what has helped them put Africa where we have been. So, in other words, he's saying that it's about time we come together. Africans, all the African countries coming together will be more than a formidable force to make sure that any remnant of these enslavement is finally stamped out and kept out. So then we can define our own idea of democracy within the African context as it works for us. So I think, and I hope we all agree, that this is enough reason to now come together, ladies and gentlemen. We can no longer afford to sit on the sideline and talk grammar while these things every day, more and more evidence of this marginalization, of this bullying, of this taking advantage of us continues to emerge. Every time I see or read about one, I gnash my teeth. So please, let's consider, rather than having splinters of diaspora groups, let's all come together. The focus of this organization, which we hope is at the foundational level, and that's why we are inviting everybody. This is not an established organization that you come in and say, okay, what are your programs? What are your this? This is at the foundational level, and we need all the ideas, all the insights, all the thoughts. We need them. We need you to come join us now. Let's build a formidable foundation upon which this organization will be established and nurtured into, hopefully, a respectable institution that will then promote our version of democracy that works for us and good governance. Please follow the instructions, click on the link, go and read up more about Dada on our website. Please join, even if it means join, as Mir said earlier in his presentation, even if it means join and watch things and give your ideas and see if this is for you or not, but hopefully it will be for you. Please, we are appealing to everybody. Thank you all so very much. Now what we're going to do, we're going to have everyone that has a question to raise his or her hands. I don't know, Prof, I don't know how much longer you are able to stay with us, so we know how many people we can allow to ask questions before you leave us.
It's fine. I can stay on for another 15 minutes at least. 15
minutes. Okay, great. So here's what we're gonna do. If you have a question, raise your hand. Go ahead.
I'm available. I can take as many as 6 questions.
Okay. All right. Okay, folks, you all heard it. So we'll take the first 6 hands and we'll number them 1 to 6. And once these questions are answered, then we can continue our discussion. Now, please, I want to appeal to us to be the professionals, the seasoned women and men that we are, and keep to 1 minute. Just go straight to your questions so that others will get a chance. Please, you may introduce yourself, tell us your name, your country of origin, your place of residence, so that we know if there are other African countries represented. And then you go straight to your question. Please, it's an appeal, please. Thank you for honoring it. So we have, I'm looking at the screen, I have Dr. Barry is number 1. Dr. Anungu Moses is number 2. Desmond Ojiako is number 3. King D is number 4. Victor Akoma Phillips is number 5. James Jamaica Burgess James, you are number 6. Prof, can we take the last one? It's only 7 hands.
Sure.
Okay, so number 7. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Okay, so number 7 is Angel Innocent. So you know your number 1 through 7. We're going to give the mic to Dr. Barry, number 1. And when he's done, Professor will address his question, and the next person until we get all 7 people. Introduce yourself, 3 items: your name, your country of origin, your place of residence, and then straight to just ask your questions, please. Thank you very much. Dr. Barry, take it on.
All right, thank you, Professor.
Good evening to everyone across the world. My name is Dr. Barry Avotu Johnson I. I am from Nigeria, and my location is Abuja in Nigeria. I am country director for Vote Must Count International Initiative. We call it the VMCII. My father, Professor Pat Utomi, I greet you this evening, sir, and I wish you all the best in your health in Jesus' name. And I pray that you will see the Nigeria of our dreams by the grace of the hand of heaven. Sir, my question is about the youth's involvement in this diasporal issues, and also about someone or people on ground. Because during the days of Nadeco, apart from their activities abroad, they had people on ground they work with, they trust, and we saw how they achieved so much. But this time around, we confirm that the diasporal people have very, very little trust on people on ground in Nigeria because of the issues of disrespect for the rule of law.
I think we lost him there.
We lost him. We can take the next question. Professor, you could take actually 3 questions in a row so that the professor will just answer 3, and in 2 sessions or 3 sessions, we could get all this done. Okay.
All right. And I want to say also, where I saw his question leading to was in terms of what is happening on the ground in Nigeria, but let's that aside. So let's go to number 2, please. Dr. Anungo, you have the mic.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, my respected Professor Paulo Utomi. My name is Dr. Moses Anungo from Nigeria in Benue State. I've listened to Prof's expositions, and I think what he has actually said and what Dada is doing is towards Afrocentricity, or what we can call Africanity. That is African-centeredness. All what Dada is doing is to return the lost glories of Africa. Now, my question is, as we're discussing the strengthening, the role of diaspora in strengthening democracy in Africa, can we actually have this idea democracy in Africa without having economic emancipation or economic independence? Is it possible to achieve that? Looking at what economy is in the progress of success of democracy, can we have achieved that? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay. Prof, should we take the next one, or you want to address that?
Okay, the next one, let me kind of take.
Okay. Okay, number 3, that's King. That's Desmond Ojiako, number 3. Go ahead.
My name is Desmond Ojiako. I'm Nigerian. I'm resident in the US, Massachusetts. I want to thank Pat Utomi very, very much. He was my senior in the Department of Mass Comm in UNN, and I'm proud of him and all he's been doing. I want to ask my question because I work for Africa as a spokesperson for almost 10 years. And what I saw there is not what I'm seeing today. You can see how emotionally I'm talking. I'm like crying. And the reason is simple. My question, Pat, is what do we do in the name of this Dada to save Nigeria and other countries that have now become countries that military have taken over? When I joined the OAU, there were about 5 countries that were military ruled. When I left OAU and helped set up the African Union, we left no other country at all managed by the military, except Somalia, that remained intractable in sickness and in fighting and in war. Today, we are going back to where we started. and I'm worried. So my question to Dr. Pat, Pat, is what do we do to regain respectability for Nigeria and these other countries that are drowning one every day?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And, you know, I wish I had an hour to deal with that question, but it's a very fundamental question. But bottom line is this for me. You have to recognize that there are a number of, I call it variables, I don't want to sound academic, that are responsible for progress. In some of the work I have done in my book, Why Nations Are Poor, I have offered a framework, which I call the Growth Drivers Framework. Sorry, Growth Drivers Framework, yes, that one. In which there are 6 sets of interdependent variables that are responsible for the progress of a nation. Amongst them, of course, are the strength of your institutions, quality of your human capital, entrepreneurship, policy choices, culture, because values shape human progress. Who sets the tone of culture? It's leaders. Africa has fundamentally failed in the area of producing leaders. Leaders are self-sacrificing people with a vision that they give everything for. The reward they seek is immortality. Unfortunately, in Africa, many of the people are not looking at immortality, they're looking at bank accounts. Unfortunately for Africa, many of these people are transactional in their engagements. So in being transactional, they don't build strong, they don't become part of the building of strong institutions. If you just compare the ascendance of some of the greatest Asian leaders, of course, the traditional example is Lee Kuan Yew and Mahathir in Malaysia. But even if you go to the Chinese model and look at the way someone like Xi came through the tracks, we have not believed in merit enough to be able to build leaders like Xi, who then impact the whole system in a way that central to what they're doing is the progress of the people. So because, again, Africa's situation is compounded by an imperialism arrangement. Look at me, the ultimate capitalist, talking like a Marxist, you know. But the truth we must recognize is that most of those we call leaders in Africa are just puppets, you know, trying to play up to people around the world for their direct personal benefits. And this makes leadership problematic in Africa. Once leadership is problematic, you don't set the right tone of culture. I mean, we say values shape human progress. I mean, look at the mess in Nigeria today. And some people will say, you know, well, it doesn't matter that the man forged certificate or this or that. Those are the fundamentals, the values. Character matters. You know, there's an old saying, when wealth is lost, nothing is lost. When health is lost, something is lost. When character is lost, all is lost. So we have a crisis of character in leadership in Africa, and it tends to pervade the space. When there is a weak civil society, and this is where the diaspora comes in big time. Civil society is where you hold people's feet to the fire. And the diaspora is civil society in a manner that if they can hold the feet of these African leaders to the fire, I give an example. I was talking about this Europe-Africa summit that I used to attend in Annecy. I talk about how at one of those summits, the current president of Cote d'Ivoire, who was then deputy managing director of the IMF, Alassane Ouattara, himself, myself, a former foreign minister of Mali who was deputy managing director at that time of the WTO, Blaise Ouedraogo, and another Ivorian gentleman, Tidjane Thiam, who was then in McKinsey in Paris, later became planning minister in Cote d'Ivoire, and so on and so forth. Four of us were taking a stroll by the lake, and we were talking about the problems of Africa, and so on and so forth. It was somewhere during that walk that Alassane Ouattara stopped and said, look, I'm going to go home and run for president. All the light bulbs went off in my head because I knew the complexity of Ivorian politics and knew what that would mean. Of course, it led eventually to a civil war. Because he was France's candidate, they eventually installed him. But this was a savvy man, exposed to the world. The day I heard Alassane Ouattara was seeking a third term, look, my blood chilled. What will happen to save Africa if someone like Alassane Ouattara, after all these years, in his old age, I saw him in Sochi, in Russia, at the, I think, Africa-Russia summit or whatever it was, and he was walking like a ghost. And I'm saying, what is he looking for a third term for? So these are the pains and the problems, and we need this diaspora as civil society to help put enough pressure on these people to stop behaving in the ways that they behave. Okay, let me just leave that as an inadequate response to your question, Desmond, but let me go to the earlier question about a new African response in collaboration. Again, part of my answer to that is almost similar to the one that I've just offered. You know, one of my favorite definitions of power was offered by Robert Dahl, I believe in 1956 or 7. And it says that power is the ability of A to make B do what B would not ordinarily want to do. And we find that the use of power by those who have been, well, who have chanced on it, let me put it that way, but are not rooted in the people, is such that if we are to free Africa, we need this balance, which a more collaborative African continent, for example, they had the peer review mechanism and all of those things. It's interesting that, you know, during a period when people like Thabo Mbeki and Obasanjo and co were together, there was a little more, I call it sagacity in the concert of African leaders. That has weakened. And the diaspora, I think, can play a significant role in welding Africa together to act in strength based on Africa's history. Remember, we're the people of Ubuntu that act collectively. I am because we are. And this false consciousness in which these leaders play up to some foreign potentates has really poisoning the ability to work together in the interest of the broad masses of Africa. This prevents democracy from being stable and going forward. Now, I have to apologize that I'm beginning to forget the first. Okay, well, Avutu Johnson was probably talking about, was heading towards the youth and the youth not getting enough trust. Trust is always earned when people work and you see what they've done. The next time their trust quotient increases and all of that. When we were young people, we did so many things so sacrificially. I tell a personal story of how I forgot my 18th birthday because we were struggling against police oppression in Nigeria, and how we were organizing at the time that every university in Nigeria, except the University of Nigeria, had been shut down following the anniversary of the Adequiju killing in Ibadan. And we had then organized to shut down the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, like I said, the only university at that time still open because of resentments at the end of the Civil War, people who had lost time and all of that. We were so passionately involved that it was at 8:30 p.m. when somebody was giving a speech, you know, the typical grandstanding speeches. Today, the people who were physically demobilized after the Civil War were finally mentally demobilized. You know, today, 6th of February, 1974 will be remembered. 8:30 p.m. I said, oh my God, this is my birthday. That's the nature of the passion that young people we brought to the table. I saw some of it during NSAS. I see quite a bit of it in the work that you, Abutu Johnson, have tried to do in protesting with the obedience movement and all of that. But we need to see more of it. We need to see young people better at organizing. I mean, like I said, I was 17 years old when we created the Student Democratic Society at UNN to galvanize against the Student Union, by the way. And we're able to get Professor Codlinye, Vice Chancellor, to give us the authority to have a rally of the entire student body, which was where that speech was being made by a gentleman called Chairman P back then. So yes, youth are very important. We must incorporate them. We must support them. But youth is a time of innovation, and they can very innovatively create ways of solving some of society's problems, which can then be backed up and supported by others. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Let's go straight to the next person, number 3, I believe, number 4.
That'll be number 4.
Number 4, yes, King D. After you, is it Akoma Phillips, and then Burchell James, Jamaica. Let's go. You have the mic, King D.
All right. This is Ewino David from Canada, originally from Edo State in Nigeria. Let me just follow Dr. Ojako's remarks. So Prof and I has come way back from Lagos Business School. I worked under him. I was in the accounts department in Lagos Business School, and we're in the same order in the Catholic Church. One important thing that I have found out over years is this. Nigerians and Africans, even though we are in the diaspora, a huge majority of us still act like we are still back in Nigeria or in Africa. Why have I said so? The things that we have benefited or acquired in this part of the world has not reflected in our character. We still have this master slavery mentality. And that is why over time it has been difficult for us to make this huge turnaround. I'm saying this, I'm speaking this from experience. We expect things to change back home, but when we are given the opportunity, we act like those back home. The question is, how and when are we going to get the persons who are in the right minds that can actually make that change? And can there be a collaboration of all the entities that are, can there be,
Can we please mute?
can there be a collaboration of all entities that are actually seeking for a change or pushing for a change in Nigeria and in Africa, to have a single front, come up with a communique that will be recognized and adopted by every single body? Dada is one body. Diaspora Vanguard is one body. Other several bodies have one objective: make Africa become independent, make Nigeria a fully democratic system. But what we don't have is a united front because of the people or a group of people acting the way the leaders back home still act. How and when and who do we believe can champion this? That will be my question. And thank you, Dada, for this great section, because this is really important. We should have things like this often so that we can express ourselves and share ideas, then come up with a paper. It's not just, we shouldn't just have this kind of sections and not come up with a position paper, because we need to move beyond where we are currently. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Professor Fat is muted again, please.
Well, he's going to take 3 questions. No, he's unmuted. So he's going to take the 3. So this, now is, Akoma, please take it. You're next. Are you there, Victor? Okay. James, Jamaica, please. Bochel, go ahead, unmute. Good. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. Greetings to you all from the Caribbean and from the land of Marcus Garvey. Awesome. And so I am co-president for the Africa Diaspora Alliance, which sought to do exactly what Dada is doing, bringing all organizations to a common position. I think one of the things that, as a Caribbean person, I've experienced both on my visit to the continent and with the diaspora is that the view of African in the diaspora of the continent is different from the view of persons on the continent of the diaspora. So we need to bring about, I think, first of all, that common understanding. And as just before me said, it's a mind. Our mindset needs to be changed. And Marcus Garvey said it well. You have to free our mind. Unless we emancipate ourselves by freeing our minds, which is only us that can do it, we will not bring about the turnaround that we desire as quickly as we could. My question is, and I'm working with the Africa Exim Import Bank, which recently launched this trade facility with CARICOM. How is it we can mobilize how is it that we can disseminate the information to the diaspora so that we bring about this common understanding and be able to mobilize the resources that clearly exist in the diaspora, and which, if utilized, will remove our dependence on the international financial institutions and the manipulation that comes with accessing resources through them. So the question really is, how do we bring about this understanding? Because even within Africa, we're talking 54 countries, and there's no uniformity in the challenges. Because even between Nigeria and Ghana, we have issues. One of our problems is the whole matter of citizenship and the ability to invest resources without paying huge fees in order to get work permit. So the year of return came and went, and we still have the issue of citizenship and access to resources in the continent. How do we overcome that?
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Pat. Can you hear me? This is Victor Akoma Phillips.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, I was speaking. Let me ask my question. Thank you very much, Dr. Pat and Dada. My question is very, very simple. So I'm Victor Akoma Phillips. I'm Nigerian, by the way, but I see myself as African, but I'm based out in Calgary here in Canada. Just to ask some few questions, and Professor Pat, I want to really appreciate what you've been doing. I've been following you. You're a very close friend to my uncle, and you've been an inspiration to me. So I used to work with MTN Nigeria till I moved abroad and voluntarily resigned from Apple in very recent time. And I posted it on LinkedIn that I was coming back to Africa to actually add my quota. Some of the people that has inspired me to do this is actually an organization that's a company called Interstellar. And this organization, I partnered with them because the founder happened to be a Cameroonian that actually also has lived in the diaspora for a while. And we came back and we contributed to the e-Naira. And just like the last question, we are currently working closely with Afrexim Bank, working closely with Pan-African Payment Settlement System as well. Now, the question that I have, and which Dada has started, is the fact that it's clear we all know leadership and politics has failed, or it's where it is. But if we all observe entertainment and technology, which of course captures a large chunk of the active youth of Africa, has been playing critical role. How can we, as Dada, I see us as we because I'm here today, leverage this? This is one of the key things I think I am contributing as an individual. And I think that Dada should play more role in this. But however, I'm now asking Prof, how can this technology space and also the entertainment industry be leveraged to actually drive this coming together of Africa in the diaspora? Finally, just to make a comment, the last speaker said that I honestly think, like what Professor Lumumba said, we might think there are no Africans that are in unison, but there are much more than we can imagine. And one of them is what has been set out today. What I suggest is that there are pockets of activities happening, but we need to consolidate. I know a very active person, Professor, I think it's Dr. Arikana Chimombori, whom I have met in a couple of times, even in the US.
It was the one I referred to.
Yes.
That is doing exactly this. Someone like this, she has a group as well. When we all come together, some of us like this can also see this as a platform to push active, measurable actions. So I would want more support in the area of, should I say, entertainment and technology, which is a very powerful tool in these last days to actually drive this unification of Africans in diaspora for Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you so much. Okay, those three questions. Prof, over to you. Prof, before you speak, Prof, before we speak, we have more hands. I don't know, we will need your permission whether to take those or not.
Yeah, you can take 3 more questions if they are that. Okay.
Okay, great. So over to you for this one.
Now, right, let me start with Victor's question. You know, this new discovery of entertainment, you know, the music, film industry as power. I'm glad that it's been seen, but at the risk of sounding like there's something special in the way that I work, I recognized this more than 25 years ago. When the Nigerian so-called Nollywood industry was just beginning, I actually went way out of my way, knowing that most of them could not afford it, to organize on Saturdays free seminars for people from Nollywood on how to organize their businesses. People like Chris Obirapo, the original producers of Living in Bondage and all of that, I tried to provide facilitation for their understanding the power that was in culture. I wrote papers 20-something years ago saying that culture provided us not only a source of revenues that will be multiple times what minerals, which were causing problems all over Africa, we're providing the continent. I actually talked about the soft power that goes with it. Today we see the kind of soft power that it is, that is flowing out of the music and entertainment. I chair the board of an NGO called PIN, and Binga Shesong, who's the executive director, about 7 or so years ago, called me one day from Zanzibar. He was beside himself. He said to me, "You will not believe what's it called? The twins, Peter and what was that? P Squared. P Squared. You will not believe what I am seeing here. I mean, these guys worship the P Square here." And he just went on and on and on. And I was not surprised, because 2 decades earlier, I was saying that that is what we should be trying to leverage and to, you know, build up the base of our influence. I had been to an international thought leaders conference in Sweden, in which a former leading European said something about how Nigeria had lost its strategic relevance in the world. And I was saying to myself, part of the problem is that those who run Nigeria don't know what to leverage for strategic relevance, and that the music and the fame of Nigeria provided Nigeria the same very opportunities that the blue jeans, Nollywood, Hollywood, and the music industry in America allowed America to culturally colonize the world. But our leadership didn't have the vision to be able to do it with what was emerging from the entertainment industry in Nigeria. So yes, I share in Victor said, you know, thinking about the possibilities from that area, we sure can mobilize that for tremendous good. Regarding trade and the Caribbean, colleague, probably Caribbean, in Jamaica, they made some point. By the way, I am chairman of PAFTRAC, the private sector committee, trade and investment in Africa, which has Afro-Exim Bank as its secretariat. I am actually expecting to be in Georgetown in Guyana for the Afro-Caribbean Summit towards the end of this month. I do think that as we get better organized, that we can leverage investments from the diaspora to turn things around in Africa. Well, back in the 90s, I used to teach cases on India and China and all of that. And I recall that after Rajiv Gandhi was killed in the assassination, India elected Narasimha Rao as prime minister. It was basically what in Nigeria we call a placeholder, because there was no Gandhi that was ready to become prime minister at that time. And this man was an old man, very old man, and there were jokes about, his management style, what time has taken care of, what time is taking care of, what time will take care of, and so on. But now, Rao, with very little to lose, as it were, risked appointing Manmohan Singh as his finance minister. Manmohan Singh would later become prime minister. But what's the important story here is that in 1991, India was technically bankrupt, had less than 3 weeks trading money in its foreign reserves. Now, when the liberalization under the guidance of Manmohan Singh began to open India up, India's foreign reserves were going up at a point by more than $1 billion a week. And I used to joke in class that the second biggest source of investments coming into India was a village in Nigeria called Nri. And people would wonder for a second how. And then I would then make everybody laugh and say, not actually a village in eastern Nigeria, but NRI, Nri, was non-resident Indians. So India's revival was driven largely by investments from non-resident Indians. Same can be done with the diaspora. The broader diaspora has capital in trillions of dollars that can transform the continent of Africa and give them even better returns than they're getting from what they're investing elsewhere, because they have an emotional connect to the continent, and therefore will feel a sense of greater safety than perhaps other investors may feel. Afro-Exim has done quite a bit in trying to deal with issues of payment systems and all of that to facilitate trade on the continent, but a lot more needs to be done. And I'm hoping I should be in Cairo next month, actually twice next month, at the Inter-African Trade Fair. And these are some of the issues that are really on the table for effectiveness. I don't know if I missed another question. Well, the first question, yes, on this round was about mindsets. There's no question about it. Mindsets matter. Garvey was right. Marcus Garvey was right back then. But I think even as we give credit to Marcus Garvey, we need to give even greater credit to Bob Marley. Between Bob Marley and Fela and Nicolas Kuti, we had some great philosophers. If we would just sit down and listen to the things they said and sang about, emancipating ourselves from mental slavery, we will make progress. Thank you.
All right. So next set, Prof has given us permission to take the next three. So News.Band, you're first. Ugo, you're second. Des Wilson, you're third. I see Galaxy A12, no name, no picture. We're not gonna have that. Please type your name or turn on your video, your camera. Let's go ahead. I think the last one is I see your picture, but there's no name. It says Samsung SM. So News.Band, Ugo, and Des Wilson. Let's go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Before you start, please, 1 second. Doc, I hate for us to come across as Oliver Twist.
No, I was just gonna say that Dr. Moses has in the chat that he asked the question that Prof didn't address, which was which I heard him, whether ideal democracy in Africa is possible without true economic emancipation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
yeah, very important. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so Prof, what would you have us
maybe
do?
I should just respond to that quickly before we start the next round. So
Okay.
I don't.
But what
Yeah,
I was trying to say, what I was trying to say is we have a lot of questions in the chat. How would you want us to handle that? That's why I say I don't want us to look like Oliver Twist.
Yeah. Okay, maybe you just read them off in a string, and I'll look. Maybe omnibus answers can cover many of them.
Okay.
Who knows? Yeah. So, but let me just make a quick response on this one. It's very difficult to have a democracy of hungry people.
Yeah. True.
It's very difficult. Because what tends to happen is that, like I gave the example of Tony's metaphor. Look, many years ago, I visited Bangladesh. I visited the Hassan Abed's institution, the biggest NGO in the world. And they had in this Bangladesh, what was that their name? Rural Development, Rural BRAC is what that NGO was called. And they had a philosophy of, even reducing the poor to those they call the ultra poor. And they helped the ultra poor by giving them what they call assets and not financial loans. What do you say? If you give a really poor person a loan of, I don't know, 500 naira, 1,000 naira to use to buy something that they can sell and make more money. They are so hungry that they immediately chop the thing. So, and then the next day, they are finished, they have nothing. They've chopped it because they needed to whack, as they say, that very moment. So what they did was they would lend them a cow, milk the cow, and at 7 a.m. every morning, we'll come by and pick up the milk. And by 8:30, your bank account will show that we have paid for the milk we picked up. That helps the poorest of the poor better. A democracy requires a certain level of independence from economic well-being.
Absolutely.
It's not a surprise that in the early days of American democracy, you could only vote if you had property, and property was a measure for capacity for independent thinking. And I tell you, look, I was saying just this evening to some group in a conversation, and co, yeah, that the British historian Neil Ferguson, you know, in writing about civilization, the West versus the rest, makes what's a very sweeping statement about the fact that the making of the US Constitution was probably one of the most profound efforts in institution building in human history. I said, when I first read Ferguson on that, I was like, oh, how can you make such a sweeping statement? Over the years, I've kept reflecting, and the more I reflect, the more I come to agree with him. There was such profundity in the making of the US Constitution, which is why it has gone for so long and remained effective even after all these years. And in a manner of speaking, is the kind of thoughtfulness to understand the impact of poverty on voting rights, so to speak, that have influenced how they thought in the framing of that constitution, yet giving room for a future date when, you know, conditions will be different and people's fundamental right to vote would be able to count more directly. You know, anyway, so quick answer, long answer to short question.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Okay, News.Band, take it away after you, Ugo, and after Ugo, D. Wilson.
All right.
Once he takes the three, we'll go ahead and read off the questions in the chat. Dr. Chete, please, you're going to help us read the questions in the chat. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, I think the most important issue now confronting especially Nigerians and diaspora is the issue of Bola Ahmed Tinubu's certificate forgery and the alleged connivance of the Chicago State University in the certificate scandal. And so some conversations have been going on among Nigerians and diaspora, especially how can they weigh in this matter to see that justice is served. The United States of America is a country where people go to jail for even what you consider minor misdemeanor, especially when committed by high-profile people, whether in the corporate world or in the political community. So we are wondering, how can Nigerians and diaspora weigh in on this matter to see that justice is served not only to Chicago State University itself, to the students of the Chicago State University who have graduated from that institution, and to Nigerians who appears to have been ruled today by someone who committed such monumental fraud like perjury, identity theft, and forgery. So, Prof, is there any way, any advice you can give Nigerians and diaspora on how they can weigh in on this important matter today?
Go and pick at Chicago State University. Hundreds, even if possible, thousands of Nigerians and their friends, some just Nigerians, Americans who think wrong has happened there, stand in front of the place every day with placards, saying things, and that will lead to petitions to the district attorney's office, the Chicago area, all of those kinds of things will bring consciousness to a point where perhaps some element of justice can be done. Okay, I was supposed to wait for the three questions, actually, I forgot.
Yeah, okay, Ugo and Des Wilson, go ahead.
Yes, good evening all. Let me applaud Dada for the wonderful work you're doing. Prof, we'll meet again. I don't know how you do it. I'm going to say it again. I don't know how you do it. When Nigerians are sleeping, you're working. When Americans are sleeping, you're also working. So I don't know what time you have when you sleep and all this. But again, good to see you. But I'm glad the gentleman that asked the question before. Oh, sorry. My name is Ugochukwu Nwokoro, the former deputy mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey. So I greet you all. My question is also has something to do with the Chicago State University. I'm glad the gentleman brought it in, but Prof, I don't want to answer your question, but I want to just tell him how it involves us. It's not even how we can get involved, because while we're looking at the transcript from the court, a staff of the university made a comment which has bothered me, and I'm sure it bothered all the other Nigerians, especially those of us in the diaspora, where he said, after they discovered that the certificate was forged, she now said that I guess is a Nigerian thing to forge certificates of organizations. You see, that alone is an indictment to every Nigerian, whether you are home or you're in diaspora. So because we are talking about prosperity, how to develop democracy in Nigeria, with narratives like that, if we don't, nip it in the bud and demand questions, demand answers, try to get the school to either put a disclaimer or to, retract this type of information, then it's going to continue to hurt us. A lot of us, the doctors, nurses, Nigerians, people that came out of Nigeria with certificates are now getting their certificates reviewed. So it's affected us. So NADECO has identified to us to take action on that matter, because I spoke with the leaders of NADECO yesterday. So they are doing something. So I would plead with Dada to also get involved. So like Professor Pat was trying to answer earlier, we have to massively go there with placards, which we intend to do, and demand answers, demand that they give us clarity. They tell us that thing they know that makes them think that is a Nigerian thing, because I'm a Nigerian, I don't know that. So let them explain to us. And if they don't have any explanation, let them apologize, let them put a disclaimer or whatever they have to do. But we must do something, we must demand all those things. And then the forgery is not just enough for us to for them to say that there's something forged. We want to look at the intricacies, because on our own, we found out some of the things, like the certificate or application says female, there's a social security number. We want the FBI to tell us who truly owns our certificate. We Nigerians, we in the diaspora, we want to know, we want questions. Why Nigeria, the Supreme Court is doing theirs? We have to do something serious to show that we Nigerians in the diaspora are not part of this and we don't tolerate it. That way they will begin to regard us. I don't want to hear when a council man here calls me, oh, Ugo, you're a Nigerian. What is happening? Your president is moving around with a forged certificate. We want to exonerate ourselves. So whatever they do in Nigeria is their business, but us in the diaspora, we want to make sure that we are not in support of it. So we are going to demand some serious explanation from Chicago State University. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So that you didn't have a question, but thank you for the answer. All right.
Is it a question though? Because the question is how important the narrative. When I first started, I wanted him to talk about narrative. How important is the narrative? Because if we allow them to define us as people that forge certificates, so that's the narrative. So I want him to talk about that because it's very important. He's an eminent professor, so he can, put light on that.
Okay, it almost got lost in your response.
I know. I tried to take the emotions and everything out.
Question. Okay, Des, you take it away, and then he will answer both of you. Dr. Chete, get ready to read some questions. Go ahead, Des. Des Wilson, can you unmute? Unmute. Okay, good.
Yeah, my name is Des Wilson, and I'm a retired teacher at the University of Uyo. I am an ethnocommunicologist, and Professor Utomi is a friend and brother. I just want to say this. I don't want to ask a question. I want to make a comment, which I want us to also reflect on. In Nigeria, over the years, it has always been, in fact, most Nigerians believe that the Nigerian political formations, they call political parties, really have not had any serious thought which led to their formation, and that they are believed to have no ideology. So I believe that now that we are starting this something great, I believe in this thought about Dada. I and have something that can start us off like an ideological base. Because you see, when people don't have something that can, like religion, if you don't have something that like commandment, don't do that, this is the right thing. Many flow along with what they see around them. So I would like Dada to get together, at least all of us, suggest ideas and thought processes that can be put together to make some ideology for the organization. And then also, through networking, we can get other organizations to buy into what we are trying to do. But I think that's my major thought here. I enjoyed all the conversations that have gone on, and I think it would be nice for us to do this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. These three hands here, we're going to, in the spirit of reading the questions in the chat, we're going to have you ask your questions. Cheta is going to read off some, so then Prof will take them in bundles, related bundles. So very quickly, you can see we are over time. Please, please go straight to the question, please. And then we have three hands, and that's the last. We will not entertain any other hands, please. It's bad enough we're already being Oliver Twist. And then
sorry, Professor Pat. Professor Pat, could you let Professor talk about the narrative, please? I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that is important because we're going to lose it. Let him talk about the narrative. Please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So Prof will answer the yes, you're right. And right after he's done, we'll take these three and the ones that we'll read off, so we can begin to round off. We don't want to keep him too long. We don't want to take advantage of his kindness, honoring our invitation. Please. All right, Prof, over to you.
All right. I think that narrative business is very important, and it also goes to the point that Des was making. And by the way, Des, I need to call you tomorrow. If I don't, please call me, because on Wednesday I am unveiling what I call the new tribe of patriots. It's really an initiative to say that we need to construct who the Nigerian we want to be is. We need a set of shared values that we all agree to. And we need new tribesmen who belong to this tribe. And if we create this new tribe and we agree that this is the Nigerian, and you should be able to see a Nigerian from 1 mile away and recognize these values in the person. This is fundamentally because values shape human progress. No nation can make progress if it does not have strong institutions and people of character providing leadership. And so we would like to see in public life. Let us define what values Nigerians collectively own and share. And anybody who does not live those values does not belong to the tribe. That initiative goes out on Wednesday. And this is very much like for you to join us, if not physically, virtually, for that conversation. I mean, when Tony was still alive, I talked about that idea, and we were all supposed to share it, but it didn't quite come around. But the time is desperately now to do that. And part of why I started talking about it back those days, one American diplomat said to me, and this goes back to the narrative that Ugo was raising. He says, look, I know that there are people like you who represent different things, but the general perception of Nigerian character is that the Nigerian is a scammer. An American diplomat here in Lagos. That was how I started the Center for Values in Leadership, to be able to sensitize a generation to the fact that values are central to the whole idea of leading. And so to roll it into the point that Ugo was raising, just 2 weeks ago, actually, interestingly, I was having lunch at the Army Navy Club in Washington with some senior people, and I was basically trying to make the point that an ethnic nationality community that can manage to produce more PhDs, 6% of their lot as PhDs, compared to the American average of 1%, 4 point something. A nationality group that can manage to produce 70% of the Black doctors in America, increasingly now one of the more prosperous nationality groups in North America, Canada, United States combined. That is a nationality group that adds value. I was mentioning the point that when we invited Joseph Stiglitz to the Lagos Business School many years ago, he had never been in Nigeria, and so he wanted some basic information on Nigeria before making the trip. He said he asked his research assistant to come up with basic information on Nigeria, and what the research assistant told him shocked him, because the research assistant just consulted census data that suggested that the Nigerians were the most highly educated migrant population living in the United States. As I was saying this to this group of Americans, including one of the publishers of Washington's newspapers, walking down the corridor was John Campbell, former U.S. ambassador to Nigeria. And he saw me and, walked over. And so I think that it's important to use the accomplishment of Nigerians to bring to light the national character question of the nation of scammers. But to make the point that the failure of our institutions has managed to allow a few scammers to get into positions of public authority. And that is the big failure of our country. Years ago, many years ago, New Breed magazine, where I did my NYSC back in 1977, published a cover story of Police Commissioner Fidelis Oyakilome, who had served as governor of Rivers State and was the drug czar. Now, Oyakilome predicted way back then that the way we were going with drugs in Nigeria, drug dealers will one day dominate the politics of Nigeria. I felt enough of this challenge. My last book was titled Why Not, with a very long subtitle, Citizenship, State Capture, Creeping Fascism, and the criminal hijack of politics in Nigeria. It's a subtitle of a book I published just 4 years ago. Unfortunately for us, that small handful of people are defining us. And whatever we're doing must be a fight back to say, these guys are not us, they are aberrations. Just like you will find thugs in Chicago, you will find mafiosos in New York, we find those people in Nigeria. Americans are not defined by those people. These people must not define us. Our problem is that our institutions are so weak that we're allowing those people to reach the top. And that is a challenge for all of us.
Can I chime in here, Pat?
Yes.
Yeah, this is Cordelia Udo.
Hi. Good to hear from you.
Yeah. Can I chime in here regarding Mr. Ugo's comment about CSU? Because yes, we need to get involved. And we need to get involved using some of their alumni. CSU is accredited by the Higher Learning Commission of North Central Association. We need to contact them, okay? The Chicago State University, hold on, because I did a little read up on that. It's ranked among, the ranking is 149 to 164 out of 167. Regional University Midwest, okay? And their one of their presidents and some of their trustees were convicted of corruption, and I believe we are even jailed. One of their alumni have started to dig into the records because he was so upset. They said their student, they used to have student union and student newspaper that held them, to account, and they, abolished that. And they haven't had any. So the guy went into the archives to look for the yearbook when Tinubu graduated. The prior years were there. The ones following were there, but that year was missing. Okay? So what is Chicago State University known for? It recruits students from underserved communities in Illinois. Okay, their popular degree programs include psychology, criminal justice, and safety studies, and elementary education. So I think we diasporans we have a duty, okay, to see how that university should be investigated. Why is it that they're hiding something? Where is the yearbook? And why are they using Nigerians, they're calling us names to cover their own track? That's all I need to say.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
I agree.
Prof, you were going to say something.
No, I say I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, so the last batch of questions. I already made an earlier appeal. If we digress, I'm going to have to interject, please. The time is very fast spent. So we take Mr. Stephen first. Young man, I still see your picture. I don't know your name is I know your name is not Samsung SM. And then Nelson Ndabihe. Once you ask your questions, Chete is going to read some of the questions we have, and Prof will take that last batch of questions, please. All right, go ahead, Stephen.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Please, all protocol observed. I don't think I have already registered with Dada, but I think I found this link from one of the obedience WhatsApp group. When I saw the post of Professor Pat coming up, so I decided to join. There are many people we have all spoken very well, and some have said that we should try to leverage entertainment industries and technologies. I know that they are viable anywhere, but my question is this: how can Dada hold the African leaders and politicians responsible? Because there have been cases where people from diaspora have tried to establish things back home, but along the line, they were frustrated and they left. So I think we should start to recorrect the things, the anomalies in politics around Africa. If we get things done politically, people are ready. Like myself, I'm not supposed to be in diaspora at this hour, at this age. Which many guys want to come back home to establish, but the environment is not calling for that. So I'm trying to know, how is Dada going to hold African leaders responsible to get the environment viable for people to come back home to establish? This is only my question. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you for keeping it short. You still haven't pushed your name. Okay, so what I'm reading is, please rename your device.
I typed that in there for him. If he doesn't rename his device, then please don't call him.
I mean, I've said that
I
already.
think I can talk now.
No.
What's your name? We want to know, who are you?
I'm Dr. Ezenwa Stanley Hughes. Dr. Ezenwa Stanley Hughes. I'm from Anambra State, live here in London, England.
And you're not able to type your name rename your device?
Because I joined
for him.
It's a simple instruction. I've been saying that since you raised your hand. Nelson, please go ahead. We'll wait. If you rename it, we'll call you. If not, we'll start reading from the chat box. Nelson,
Hello.
please take the mic.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Prof. Utomi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Still on this certificate saga. Don't you think that the university is complicit in the whole thing? Because I begin to wonder how you can say that someone graduated from your school, and then he has a transcript, but there is no certificate. Would not have been better for them to say outrightly, yes, so Bola Ahmed was admitted, but he never graduated? That would have been to come clean than to bring out, because my idea of a transcript is that you have graduated and the transcript is showing all that you have scored and all of that, is at the point of exceeding the school that the transcript may be necessary, or would have been prepared to show that these are the detail of the courses you have taken and you have passed. So don't you think that, and those of you that are in America, is there any way people can put this school on pressure in order for them to come out clean? Because I don't think that that the position they have in the court is fully the truth of what really transpired. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's questions have been asked severally, and he's going to answer that. Okay. Good. Dr. Iwa, please go ahead now and ask your question. Chete, get ready to read.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor Pat. I've been listening to you with great joy. The explanation you have been giving to the questions emanating from the conversation tonight. Please, I want to ask a question. You spoke much about Africans coming together, Africa coming together to form a formidable front. I want to know if we are looking at the direction of Africa, the complexity of African nation. For example, concerning the religion, language, tribes, how can these people come together and be able to form a homogeneous Africa, jettisoning their tribe, their religion, and their political affiliation? Because I'm trying to see something possible, something realistic. Is it possible for Africa to come together? On what ground, on what basis? Since there are different beliefs, different religious beliefs, different tribes, different languages, different understanding, different political affiliation, what is the possibility? That's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Wiwa, for keeping it very brief. Okay, Chete, take it away.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Prof. Pat. Luckily, there are really only kind of a summative two questions. And the first question is a summary of three, which were put in the chat by Dr. Ezenwa. He just asked all those questions. So the second question is, how do we empower our folks back home so they can know their rights and speak up? It appears the masses are just okay with the deplorable situation. What are your thoughts on that, sir? So that's all for now.
Oh, that's it. Oh, great. We're in good shape then. So, please, Prof, let me use this opportunity to ask a clarifying question about something you said. You're unveiling a concept, the concept of tribesmen, and I was wondering if that did you mean are you talking about the Nigeria as a tribe, the tribe of Nigeria, or should we be talking about citizenship? So I would like to get clarification on that, because my understanding, according to the Greek definition, is the tribesmen are limited, myopic tribal people, and that's really not what we want in Nigeria. So I was thinking whether you actually meant to say, you know. So all right, sir, thank you. That's the last question, so take it over, sir. Let's see. Is he still here? Did he fall off? I actually don't see him. Hold on. Does anybody see him?
I don't see him here either.
Uh-oh. He might have fallen off. Let's see.
That's my thought.
All right. Well, having said that, I think we're almost done. If we can have I think Kevin has already told the group on how to get into Dada, how to use our social media to communicate, and that we welcome all. Yes, if you want to say something, Kevin, on that ground, please.
Let Kevin speak.
To join Dada, Dada, it's also very technologically driven. So all you have to do is to go to the website, Diaspora Action for Democracy in Africa.org, and the registration button is conspicuous on the website. All you have to do is to register, and once you register, fill your details, your information, choose your country from whatever part of the world you are in. I'm trying to share a document, a link, but it's not coming up. Just fill whatever information you're supposed to, your name, your country you are in, and actually initial sign up normally charge just a little of about $10. That's the initial registration. Then so that's it. That's the website. You see the registration button there. You click on it, and it takes you to the to the form where you fill your details and your information. But if you have any problems while you're doing anything there on the side, there's a chat button at the bottom right. You see where they wrote chat with Dada. Once you do that, it links you up to someone on our WhatsApp end, so they can always put you through or give you directions on what to do. So that's basically it. On social media, we're on Twitter and we're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Our handle is Dada in Africa. So it's Twitter or actually x.com/Dada in Africa. And on Facebook is Dada in Africa. You can follow us there on that. They also have
Kevin, if you can post all that on the chat box so they can see if one so they can see you.
Okay, I'll be posting it down so it'll be easy for just so you can all check the chat box and you see there. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen,
unshare your screen, please, Kevin,
yes,
please.
Could you stop sharing your screen, Kevin? So, ladies and gentlemen, we are hoping after all that you've heard that you will be willing to be a part of building of this organization whose time is here. Now, I heard some concern about how we can coordinate the different pockets of other diaspora organizations. I think perhaps that will be one of the things that we will need to discuss once we come together. But your ideas, your thoughts, your insights cannot be a part of building this organization if you are not part of it. So please, we're asking for all our sakes. If you can actually say Dada is about Ubuntu. It's all of us together. We can no longer be segregated or separated or from disunited from one another, because that's one of the things that have made it easy for these powers, Western powers, to take advantage of us. We have enough brains now to be able to, and we have a great understanding now of what is going on, that we are able to stand up and say, enough, we want to take what's ours. So please, we are appealing, Dada is appealing on behalf of all the BOT, all the members of Dada, we are appealing to you to come on board and help to build a strong organization. When it comes to other diaspora organizations, at some point, we should be able to maybe form a coalition of diaspora organization for even a stronger union. We need to all be part of recruiting other Africans from other African countries. The more, the merrier, at least at this building stage, so that you feel that you're part of your ideas, your thoughts are part of the foundation of this organization. Please. So we cannot say that enough. We cannot overemphasize that. Every single one of you that spoke, that asked questions, has brilliant ideas that can help to build this organization. So we welcome you in advance. Go ahead and join, bring your ideas, and let's see where this will take us. And as you do so, spread the word among your contacts who are other Africans to come on board. It's really important at this point in time. We can't keep looking like idiots. We can't keep looking like the most brilliant minds in the Western world, and at the same time be from a country that is literally trashed by these same people. They enjoy the status of world power thanks to our brains. So it's time, please, I can't say it enough. I cannot emphasize it enough. Please join. Let's start building, and then let's start thinking and discussing how we can bring everybody together so that at some point they will realize that, oh, finally, these people have woken up thanks to the diaspora. And listen, it is the diaspora that will do it. the Africans in the countries are not going to do it. I hope we understand that much. Thank you all. I yield to,
Dr.
Professor
Cordelia has the vote of thanks.
yes, I wanted to say I yield to her, but Professor is not here, but she's still going to go ahead and do it in absentia.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Cordelia.
I'm glad he heard my voice.
You broke protocol, but go ahead.
You spoke so lovely, my sister, and you took the mic and ran as if you are the professional MC.
Thank you, sister. Thank you. Thank you.
All
Great
right.
job, Prof. Great job. No, I said that the Prof did a good job. Great job.
Yes. I am Dr. Cordelia Udo. Well, Prof know me. I'm the one of the BOTs and the chair of the membership. We reorganized after the Nigerian election of 2023 to hopefully gather African diasporans, Caribbeans, Black Americans, and especially Nigerians who witnessed the brutal rape of democracy in Nigeria this year. We need to harness our manpower and finances to ensure greater success in the exercise of true democracy, that those who died and injured will not have died in vain, that Africa under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish in my generation, our generation. This is a civil rights struggle of my generation, your generation, a marathon. We shall not drop off as Prof. Utomi said, from the world map, okay? We need leaders, as he said, of great characters. Afro-pessimism shall be turned into Afro-optimism. So Patumi is not here, therefore, I guess I have to still thank him in his absence. Prof, thank you for your insightful speech. Unknown to some of you here, really, Patumi was battling prostate cancer. I mean, I need to say it for the guys in the forum, go check your PSA too. And he was under grueling treatment during the campaign, yet he found the strength to be everywhere our President Peter Obi was, writing speeches and offering advices. May the force be with Prof. Utomi. We wish you well. I want to thank the BOT and the Executive Council of Dada. Many of us are present here for making Dada a reality and for this Zoom meeting. I thank the audience for calling in, and I hope you join us. Thank you. Thank you. Finally, I need to run to the bathroom.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Cordelia.
Okay, so we wrap up. Over to you, President.
Yes, thank you, Prof. You did an excellent job, and I would like again to thank everybody that has joined this Zoom meeting. It's going to be a continuous process. We all need to come on board and build this organization and be able to help African countries to build a better democracy. But like I always tell people, you cannot give what you don't have. You have to first of all discipline yourself before you can discipline others. So someone mentioned during the question and answer session that Nigerians or Africans, they come to the Western world, they learn everything they are learning, they prosper, they are the best over there, and then they go back to their countries and be the worst of them. So we got to start asking questions, why is that? How come that in America, in Europe, in India, in China, we obey the laws, but as soon as you step your foot on the continent of Africa, you become lawless? It's very sad. So, but we need to first of all change our own mentality so we can change the continent. Thank you again for coming, and I really do appreciate all your time. Thank you.
All right, all right. To something you just said now, if you don't, please, if you don't mind me, to 1 minute, less than 1 minute. There is this mindset, and somebody asked that question. This mindset is all about our mindset that needs to change. A lot of people believe in this age-old cliche: if you can't beat them, you join them. Okay, so they come, yeah, in spite of all that they learn here, they go home and the pressure is on. The pressure, I literally had to fight with my family every day. They got frustrated, they got disgusted with me. Keep telling me this is Nigeria. I say, if I hear that one more time, I'll cut all of you off. It was a real fight. Okay, so some of us perhaps don't want to deal with that pressure or cannot stand up to that pressure, and they succumb and they hear, if you can't beat them, you join them. I told my family, before I join you, I'll disown all of you and go back to US. So that's kind of what we need to encourage amongst ourselves. You really have to be the beacon of light and not let them suck you in, no matter what they do. So it's a very important point, and that's part of the self-education, hopefully, that we are going to put one another through our discussions, and and get to learn how we can resist that. It's really it can be a tremendous pressure, so I just wanted to keep that in. It's not an excuse for those who do that, but just so we know, and then you can decide if you're one of those. And besides, I worked in an institution. Let me just share this. I worked in an institution where it's a health system. If anybody knows anything about Atlanta, Georgia, it's Grady Health System, one of the level 1 trauma healthcare. But there is another major health system there that is Emory Health System. Guess what? Most of the nurses and doctors that work at Grady also work at Emory. Now, to my greatest surprise, to buttress the point you just made, you find people who go to these very same nurses and doctors that work at Emory. When you go there, you see them, they look so professional, they act so professional, they are on their P's and Q's, and if you have met them at Grady, you'll be wide-eyed, you'll be staring at them and say, is this the same person? They are totally different. Their mannerism, the way they talk, the way they carry themselves, the way they approach patients. But when they come to Grady, it's like, but they are all bipolar. They come to Grady, it's a different person that you're seeing. They act like alberos. They talk anyhow, they use foul language, they go to Emory, they transform totally into a totally different human being. So I think that's what's happening to some of us. We go home and, Trump said we were shithole and we were angry. But the reality is, given what is happening, that's what it looks like. So you go from civilization and you go there and the pressure comes on, but this is Nigeria, this is Nigeria. It's like a mantra. So then you begin to act, to conform, so to get along, to save you from unnecessary arguments, to save you from time and energy to engage with them in that losing argument. So then you succumb to it. I think that's what's happening, and then institutions that are not working. So who's going to hold you accountable?
I think sorry to real quick addition to that is the illustration or the analogy you gave, by the way, sorry, is between Grady, which is kind of a community hospital system, and Emory, and different behaviors of the same health professionals shows the human beings are the same everywhere. So it then falls in the sense of how the extent of the rule of law and how strong the institutions are in a particular society to make people conform. So that's kind of like the problem we have in Nigeria, and that's why it's so crucial and critical that we, our governance system is put in place in where we have rule of law, because then a lot of these behaviors won't be tolerated. So if people get in diaspora, they behave well, they come on time to work. If you take a job in Nigeria, you have to come to work on time, because the system is set up in the way you are punished for behaving wrongly. So I think it's not so much of a Nigerian thing, it's a system thing. So that's why, all of us really should come on board and try to do as much as we can to, enhance good governance back home, as difficult and as challenging as it is, because that's what will make people behave well, ultimately.
Mr. President, can we call this meeting to a close? We spent 3 hours, 40 minutes of talk now.
Yeah, absolutely.
These issues are important issues. When we do our evaluation, we should compartmentalize them and discuss them in greater detail. So let's respect the time and then allow people to go. Thank you, Mr. President.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Miabi. The only thing I'm going to add before we leave is that a couple of people missed your presentation, and we're going to make it available on our website and then post it on some of the groups so they can be able to review it on their own. Thank you. On that note, I think we are ready to go home and get some sleep.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mia, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you, Chete.
And thank you, Prof.
Excellent, Mr. President. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Now go hit the button and join.
Dr. Cheta is not showing her face.
Who?
I really want to know the person, and each time I will be rushing. No way, she doesn't show her face.
Yeah, she showed her face when
I saw my face was sitting here.
Okay, I can see you now.
I think the meeting has closed, so this is meeting after meeting.
Yes,
yes?
This is conversation. This is conversation.
Yes, so Professor Cheta, I think that for once I saw another side of you in this meeting. The ease with which you took out the key points and communicated them clearly, so that I was very impressed with the way you were able to pick that. And I think that we have that value to be grateful for and to use as we go on. We think that we probably need that value a lot to give us this type of on-the-point summary of discourses. And the general outlook of the whole thing was beginning to be professional. And I want to congratulate Mr. President and the alternate president for the level of professionalism that we are using